Okay, I call to order this meeting of the Township Committee of the Township of Morris this Tuesday, December 21st. The time is now 5:33. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Durfee,
Here.
Mr. Rabbits,
Here.
Mr. Mancuso,
Here.
Mrs. Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Griselle.
Here. And Danielle, can you please read into the record the Open Public Meeting Act statement?
The legal notice required in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied and a statement certifying the same will be executed.
Thank you. And now the resolution for the record.
Resolution 248-21, authorizing the conduction of a closed meeting as defined in the Open Public Meetings Act concerning legal and personnel matters.
Very good. Will somebody move that?
I will. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we will adjourn now to closed session and reconvene at 7 p.m. I don't have my gavel to slam, but I would if I did.
Are we good, guys? Okay. So we have that flashing red light sign going towards Morristown. That's because of the limited sight distance issue, and having the crest of the hill so close to the left-hand turn, I think, is very problematic. So again, I think citing Stockton Road as the primary access point, I'm not saying exit point, but access point for safety is appropriate, and I don't have an issue with via Stockton Road. This language in the ordinance. Let's see. Number 4 on my list is reducing the setbacks from Columbia Road. It gets into the history that some people out there were not part of. We ended the last hearing with Mr. Kavanaugh, who stated that he was, I think, a 52-year resident, 50-something-year resident, and that he had participated in those hearings, and that we should take in consideration the residents that have lived here a long time, in addition to the opinions of the residents who have just moved here recently. I was part of those deliberations. I was on the Township Committee at that time. And one of the things that I wanted to do with that property is to use some of our open space funds at the time to purchase a wooded parcel. In fact, the area at the corner of Park Avenue and Columbia, not right at the corner, but set back a little bit, was a wooded area. And those woods were all cut down, but I had proposed that we use some open space funds to try to preserve some of those lands as open space. And the compromise that was reached at the time was preserving the Great Lawn. And that's why we have those big, large setbacks. That was the agreement made to accommodate the concerns of the Township Committee and the residents, and that's why there is that great lawn that has been preserved. There is also a stand of trees that still exists near the service road that is part of that setback. And, you know, from my point of view, we had made promises. I had made a promise. The governing body made a promise. Mr. Mancuso was on the governing body at the time, and maybe he can speak to this too. We're the only two that were around back then. But there was a promise made to the community about preserving that front lawn because the whole rest of the site was being developed. Residents who didn't live here back in 2010, 2012 don't know what the campus looked like, where there was great amounts of open space all around the property leading up to the commercial area that was what is now lot 5 and lot 4 and lot 5. So keeping that setback off of Columbia Road is actually very important to me. I understand some of the residents' requests to shift some parking to the front lawn. That might ease some congestion internally in the lot and give the applicant some ability to move things around. It was a promise that I made to residents. It was something that residents asked for, to preserve some of that open space. I've gotten a couple of emails to remind me of what the deliberations were like back in 2012 when we created that original ordinance. But in terms of the setback, I'm fine with how the ordinance is written. That reflects the deliberations back in 2012, the desires of the residents back then, many of which still live here, to keep that open space look on the front lawn. And I think that covers that.
Mayor, can I add one thing to that?
Yep.
So just, to be clear, if you look at the ordinance, section 7B G,
Mhm.
it says that the language is that the minimum parking setback is 350 feet from Columbia Road, and in 3BD, the minimum building setback is 450 feet. And I would like to ask Mr. Phillips if you could comment on that difference there with the parking setback and how that aligns with what Jeff was just talking about with the Great Lawn preservation that was part of the agreements from the past.
Sure. So a couple of things. First, if you look at the Red Bull's latest concept plan, you will notice there is only a very small sort of triangular portion of the parking area that actually encroaches within that 450-foot setback. The bulk of that 450-foot building setback is also maintained for parking in their concept plan, but because of that small encroachment, we basically allowed the parking to be within 350 feet. But I will tell you that in that area where there is the encroachment, that area, and importantly, the area between where the parking would be in Columbia Road, is heavily vegetated. So in fact, that area is going to be screened, and that kind of front area will continue to be preserved. But I think perhaps most importantly, if you kind of look in their concept plan where that small encroachment is, it's within an area that has already been disturbed and has historically been used for parking by Honeywell. So in essence, there's going to be no additional sort of breaching of that front lawn area based on the concept plan. So that's the logic between the parking setback vis-a-vis the building setback. And I think the bottom line, Mayor, is that the front lawn area that you discussed, and that was clearly, there was significant sentiment to preserve that front lawn area. And I was also the township's planner at the time of the Honeywell zoning. That will continue to be preserved under this ordinance.
Thanks. Did that answer your question, Kathy?
Yes, I was connecting it with the comments you made.
Very good. And Mr. Mancuso, at this point, do you want to weigh in on the front lawn since you were part of the deliberations?
I agree with what Mr. Phillips said. It was a very, very important thing to the residents at the time. There was some opposition, obviously, to the project at the time, and that was one codicil that we all agreed to keep on, to keep that front lawn in a halcyon state. So I just agree with your whole hypothesis, Mr. Phillips.
Very good. Okay, so next on the list I heard from residents about speeding within the Columbia Park development, and we recognize that as a concern. It is one of those things that's not part of the zoning ordinance that we're discussing, but I did want to acknowledge it. I want to acknowledge all the things that I heard from the public during the hearings. And so I wanted to acknowledge that. And I know that the police chief has been working with, or the police department has been working with the homeowners association on some of those concerns and making some suggestions. And like I said, there are options. There are options to help try to reduce the speeding, but we know it's a concern. And it'll be recognized when this goes to the planning board as well. Walkability,
Mayor?
Yes.
Just one quick question on that. So the way this works is that the Property Owners Association confers with our police department and they make recommendations about what, traffic calming interventions would be appropriate?
I'll turn that over to Mr. Quinn to make comment, but again, it's not really part of our deliberations tonight.
I
It's not-
agree.
It's not part of the zoning. I know it's an expressed concern, so I wanted to acknowledge it and just make sure that people understood we're addressing it, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Quinn.
It's working with the homeowners association to address their concerns. They're going to assist them. As you know, they are private roads, so enforcement of speed limits and that kind of thing, they are not able to do. At this time, there is a provision where they could be given the powers to do so. That would have to be a decision by the governing body whether or not to enact that. But that would be down, down the road. But right now, they're working with them as to, possible ways to do traffic calming, addressing some of the current concerns there. One of the concerns is the access onto Prescott from Park Avenue, and there's a no left turn there, but putting in some barriers, some other things, working with the county to prohibit those left turns other than just signage, some type of barrier. So all things that are, they're working with them to see if they can come up with some solutions to address the concerns and what can be done, as part of that. And they're going to do some speed counts and volume counts to assist with the process.
Our police department is going to do that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that'll be helpful.
Good. Next, we had some talk about walkability within the community. The Red Bulls had made the statement that they are going to, there's no impeding the access to the loop trail. I think that's part of the underlying agreement anyway, but that will remain accessible to everybody. And there was the concern about that one missing stretch of sidewalk. Mr. Slade is aware of it. He made the comment that he thinks that there might be some room to squeeze a sidewalk in there. How we do that and who pays for it is another question, but it's something that's on our radar to fix. And it will be part of the thought process, I think, of the municipality in conjunction with the homeowners association on how to make that happen, but to ensure that there's a safe walking environment throughout the property after this, that, if and when the Red Bulls proposal does go through, the planning board will look at the walkability as well, as again, overall safety at the site to ensure that residents can circulate as they do currently. Let's see, light spillage was brought up because of viewing other fields in the area. We had made the point that, some of the older fields in the area use older technology. The LED technology in the last couple of years has brought great improvements to how light can be directed. And we heard from the Red Bulls that the latest technology will be used. Again, that is a site plan issue with the spillage of the light. But what we hear is that there won't be much, if any, spillage at all with the new kind of light technology, but there will be experts at the planning board level that will address all of those concerns. As I stated before, the public will be able to question each and every one of the experts individually on their testimonies, so that you'll know exactly what the light proposal is, and then there are adjustments that can be made by the planning board if necessary. But that issue is a site plan issue.
Mayor, can I make one
yeah.
comment about that?
Mhm.
So I believe it was at the public meeting with residents, the Red Bulls referenced that there were 2 schools in the area that had same types of lights. And I believe one was East Hanover Middle School and the other was West Morris High School. And so I I went over there one night at night and there were a bunch of different lights over there. So at some point it would be good to get some clarification on which lights. And I know that's a Red Bulls question, but I could imagine that being of interest to residents who might want to see it for themselves.
Yeah, so Jim Slate,
Sure.
could you comment on what the residents could expect at the planning board in terms of, the expert testimony regarding the lights?
Well, I would expect that the lighting manufacturer, and they're working with Musco, it's a big name and that stuff, that they would provide, detailed testimony, and I think they'd be able to provide some locations for, similar recent installations for people to view.
Yeah, I would think so too. That they'd be able to show how the lights worked at other places, other existing facilities, I should say.
Correct, and they're able to model the lighting on the field and off the field as how much spillage occurs, outside of the field lighting. So, the detailed information is provided on the lighting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and again, at the planning board hearing, there'll be more specifics on where the lighting stanchions will be located, which fields will be proposed to be lit. And again, the planning board has rights to ask the applicant to reduce lighting in certain areas if they think it's in the public interest. So again, there's going to be discussion at the planning board hearing about that, and more to come on that. But the bottom line is the public will have the opportunity to cross-examine and question the expert testimony at the planning board. Does anybody else have any comment about the lights, or should I just keep on moving through this list? Okay.
Feel free to keep moving.
Okay, very good. With the fellow neighborhood people, again, I wanted to just recognize that we heard you. We understand your concerns. It is the intent to keep Featherly as a cul-de-sac. I have high confidence that when you see the plan from the Red Bulls, that it'll be similar to the concept, similar roadway network to what we saw in the concept plan, which means that there's no connection to Featherly, and we will put that into the legislation to, I'm not sure what the right wording is, to make that cul-de-sac permanent with the approval at the planning board level. I don't have any doubt that was going to be happening. There was a question about neighborhood safety and putting up some signage to ensure that the public didn't, not the public, but the general public wouldn't confuse entrance to Featherly as a possible entrance to the site. So there was talk about putting up some neighborhood signs, which was a very good idea. Again, that's all down the road, but excellent suggestions that Ms. Wilson and Mr. Jorfy, as was referenced earlier, are going to be on the planning board next year. We'll take those suggestions to the planning board and carry them forward, in addition to the public testimony that's going to be given at the planning board. And in terms of the noise coming from the site, something that Mr. Ravitz had talked about, there will be a noise expert to testify at the planning board hearing about what noise might be emanating from the site with the fields in use during various different kinds of uses. But again, part of the plan is going to be beefing up the vegetation and screening to the neighboring areas throughout the site. And I think that's part of the remediation that will occur. But again, there's going to be testimony about that. But we did hear you. We understand the concerns, and that will be addressed at the planning board as well. And then about the uses of the facilities on the weekends and tournaments. The Red Bulls did say that there are certain kinds of tournaments that will be held. They're not big tournaments, they're invitational tournaments. A resident had sent us an email with a link to their website that showed an invitational tournament that they had hosted with 8 teams. They made the statement to the governing body that only 2 fields would be used at once. That's not the kind of tournament where you have, lots and lots of teams from the surrounding area descend on the site, and there are multiple games going on throughout the day on all the fields. They had stated that there were only going to be 2 fields used during those kinds of invitational tournaments. And there would not be a lot of traffic associated with all the fields being used at all times during what might be deemed a tournament. So again, they will put that into writing. That will be part of the resolution at the planning board. There's a lot of things that come out of the planning board that are put into a resolution that everybody has to abide by. And I assume that they made the statement on the record to the Township Committee. They'll make the same statement to the planning board that only 2 fields will be used for games at any time, at any one time. So that will limit the impact of traffic of people coming in and out of the site on the weekends when those tournaments might be held. But again, the details of that will be discussed at the planning board. They talked about the bleachers, the fact that the bleachers are there for the parents that come. There is no specific size of the bleacher. Again, the size of the bleachers will be determined based on the need and negotiated at the planning board, and they will have to give good reasoning for putting in larger bleachers versus smaller bleachers. But again, it's a detail that will be covered at the planning board, and there will be some negotiation between the planning board possibly and the Red Bulls as to what the size of those bleachers would be. So you'll hear more about that at the planning board level. I think that covers all the points that I wanted to talk about. So I've done a lot of talking tonight. I'd like to hear from everybody else. So who would like to go next to make a statement, whether you want to make it your closing statement, whatever kind of statement you want to make?
Mayor, I can go if
Okay.
no one else wants to go. And I think a lot of, Mayor, I appreciate you providing context and talking us through the whole list, and Kathy for your context as well. I think, the reason why there isn't a ton of back and forth is because the overwhelming majority of these points are site plan issues, as we've discussed over and over again, that really aren't up for debate right now as we're talking about the zoning ordinance. But with that in mind, I did just want to provide some commentary to provide additional background of my thought process, just as Committeewoman Wilson did earlier. But first, I just want to commend our residents, the members of the public, for actively participating throughout this process. It is incredibly valuable to us as a governing body to hear and learn from your comments and suggestions. And I am very pleased that we have, like Mrs. Wilson said, gotten a lot of feedback that has been beneficial, and I think will be beneficial to any site plan hearings in the long run. I think for this decision, we have to realize that this isn't just impacting Morris Township for the next 5 or 10 years, but it's going to impact for the next 20 and 30 years. This is not a decision we should take lightly, and it is something that will impact Morris Township for decades. Morris Township is going to continue to evolve during this time period. It is something that we have to factor in through this thought process. I understand the concerns that many of our residents who have reached out to us over the past few months with aspects of the zoning ordinance, like I said, with site plan issues. And I do, like I said, believe the overwhelming majority of these concerns raised by many of our neighbors will be addressed at the site plan, particularly traffic flow, access, lighting, noise, and buffering. Those are legitimate concerns. And as Mrs. Wilson said earlier, as a member of the planning board next year, it will be top of mind and will remain top of mind as we go into deliberation should this zoning ordinance move forward. We also have to factor in the traffic concerns and flow and access and things of that nature, not only now, but in the future. Morris Township is going to continue to change as the demands of the real estate market evolve. And we have to be cognizant of the interests, and just like Mayor Grazel said, the market interests, and be cognizant of the fact that if this isn't a proposal we want or a zoning change we want to make, what are the alternatives? And I've read about the Novartis project this week that Mayor Grazel referenced. We know high density residential is a recurring theme, especially on Park Avenue. And this is something that's really must really be considered seriously as part of this decision-making. If not this proposal, what is the alternative? Next, I just wanted to commend the governing body for following, and then also, our professionals and the Red Bulls, quite frankly, for following the best practices this governing body has set forth through our land use reform resolutions that we passed earlier this year, which didn't necessarily impact this proposal. It was for redevelopment plans, which this was not. However, in good faith, the Red Bulls and the professionals and everyone involved followed the best practices that the Township Committee set forward earlier this year by providing notice to residents beyond what the statutory requirements were, by the Red Bulls, the prospective developer, meeting with the public themselves before our public hearings happen at the governing body, by our professionals putting together frequently asked questions for our residents to have the moment the announcement was made that this is being proposed, and not completing this process in one meeting, which has happened in the past, and actually committing to holding a vote, not on the first night, but when we thought it was appropriate, which we haven't even gotten to yet. This is really important for our residents to know that not only are we continuing to be committed to these resolutions to make sure we have as much transparency as possible and making sure we have as much public input as possible, but I think it's important to remind folks that this doesn't happen in every town. Some towns will get the meeting over with in one shot. Other towns will handle it the way they want, or they'll stick to the minimum standards. We have made it a goal of ours to set the bar higher for our residents to make sure they have every opportunity possible to provide input in this process, even to the fact that we'll extend it as long as we think we need to ensure that happens. So I commend the governing body to continuing to stick to these principles. And I really hope that our resolutions and our reform efforts get adopted in towns neighboring us, because it's so important, especially as we see development sprouting up all over northern New Jersey and New Jersey, because so many times our residents are shut out of the process. And I think what we're doing now is really important. So, Mayor, those are a lot of the factors I'm considering. And I'll yield back as I lose my voice and get a glass of water for myself.
Very good. Mr. Ravitz, would you like to make your comments?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just want to commend you in particular on really addressing such a comprehensive list of issues that had come up over the last couple of meetings. Thank you for that. It was a great recap, and I'm going to, I want to also commend Mr. Jorfi and Ms. Wilson on their eloquently put commentary on this. We'll try to add my little spin to this. I'm in agreement with them totally, and I'll try to approach it from a little bit different perspective. I'm very appreciative of the township professionals who prepared and addressed the resident concerns, and the Red Bulls general manager who spoke at the end of the last meeting. I especially really want to thank the residents who expressed their thoughtful and very impassioned comments over 2 very long meetings, and they were very well received and very much appreciated. And I, along with the rest of the governing body, heard some great ideas that we trust will be addressed at the planning board level. There were many comments about traffic and traffic flow, other comments ranging from noise and light pollution to safety concerns. I think that most of us, at least I'd like to think that most of us see the Red Bulls moving to Morris Township as a good thing overall. It'll bring commerce and even more prestige for all our residents and businesses, and not to mention the added tax revenue that benefits all of us. Again, as the mayor had reminded everybody, the Red Bulls are fully funding this project and will not be receiving any tax incentives from the township. That being the case, the rest is all the details. It's all the details. Our deliberation tonight is not about the final plan for the site, but rather the zoning to allow an athletic training facility at that location. The plan that many of us are familiar with will likely go through a few iterations before it's approved by the planning board. And it's in those interactions that the concerns of the residents will have the greatest impact and should be addressed and considered. And that is exactly what the mayor and Ms. Wilson and Ms. Giorfi have been saying. At the end of the day, we're just considering zoning. So the project can move, to its next phase. The governing body will have final approval when the ultimate path is the ultimate plan is put forth. And we need to let the process play out. We'd expect nothing less from any other large-scale project that comes into the township. This is the basis of how I come to the opinions I've just stated. Stockton Drive is now the name of Road A, as it has appeared on previous maps, regardless of what road signage says. In a very recent Vision Real Estate Partners letter that the mayor referred to the Morris Township Committee, they state that they are near a 50% stakeholder of the property. In that letter, they state that Road A has always been what they call the grand entrance of both Allied Signal and Honeywell. This was approved by a previous township committee and the Morris County Planning Board. As for traffic, we did hear some really good ideas about traffic flow, and they can and will be explored by the planning board. A traffic study is part of any new development of this size in our township. As for light pollution, today's outdoor lighting leaks much less into the night sky while directing light downward to a predefined area. Lights will certainly not be illuminated, through all hours of the night. And residents will still be able to see the stars on nights which allow for it. As for the noise pollution, I can tell you that I'm a recovering soccer dad of an elite level player, a state champion, and a Division I starter. Athletic training will not have the look and feel of an actual game. I've attended countless training sessions and games, and I can't imagine too many residents wouldn't want to watch practices, from any vantage point. The Red Bulls have stated that they will not hold tournaments at the facility. And I think that the mayor did address this a short time ago. While it appears that they have hosted some sort of tournament at their current facility in Hanover, and even if they do something similar here in Morris Township, it was only for 2 age groups, and they were not all there at the same time. As I believe it was pointed out that only 2 fields would ever be in use at the same time. And I believe from the Red Bulls website, I saw there were only about 6, maybe 8 academies that were invited to participate. So the noise level should not be an issue. Young adults playing would certainly have a better sound than traffic whizzing by on Route 24, Columbia Turnpike, or Park Avenue. And as for safety, which is something we all want for our neighborhoods, soccer does not bring crime. Professional athletes and young elite players are not thieves or vandals, and their parents aren't thieves, vandals, or kidnappers. They will be using this facility to improve their skills and gamesmanship for continued future success in a sport that they love. I've heard loud and clear the concerns voiced by the residents that will be mostly impacted, directly impacted by the Red Bulls coming to town. But as one of your elected officials, I represent all the residents, and I'm a steward of sound governance, and and the future of the township. while this development may make some residents feel uneasy today, I look forward to our community's future. I firmly believe that once the Red Bulls establish residence here and have shown us all what good neighbors they are, we will all be happy that they chose Morris Township as their new home. So all that being said, barring any new bombshell information that comes to light, I'm going to vote for the approval of the zoning ordinance. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ravitz. Mr. Mancuso, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, I agree with Mr. Joffrey's remarks earlier in the evening about the type of government that we proffer to the people in our township is very, very different from many other towns. We do what's needed to be done. We work as hard as we can. We look into every one of the permutations of what it is we're talking about, and we give it all the exposure that we possibly can. I think the Red Bulls themselves are an elite organization with a proven track record of community involvement, with a pledge to engage the local community and do what needs to be done to become good neighbors as they are. What's best for the whole town in the aggregate, as Mr. Ravitz said, is very, very important to all of us, because we are the outlet and the avenue for 24,000 plus people to speak. And I think it's important that we've given the public the chance to say what they had to say, and listening to the thought process of all of the people on the committee. I'm very, very pleased with the thoughts that have gone into what they're talking about. I think this is a good project. It's good revenue for us. The aesthetics are good. There will be no commercial tournaments. It'll be a low impact thing. And as it was said before many times, it was self-funded with no tax breaks or no pilot programs. There has been no market for corporate office space for the past several years. And obviously with the COVID, it's increased. So we've been able to transform, or will be able to transform, an outdated corporate facility into a modern mixed-use campus. They have gotten approval by the Morris County Planning Board as well as our own planning board. I think the Professional Academy for Youth Teams is a good thing for us. Reducing the number of cars into and out of the facility is a good thing for us. The good use of the property in low impact and reduced environmental impact is good for us. The Red Bulls are an elite organization, as I said before. They will do what's best for our community, and we will welcome them in because it's another source of tax revenue for us, and it is a good use for a property that may not have had many other good uses. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ravitz.
No, thank you, sir.
Sorry, Mr. Mancuso. Sorry about that. Ms. Wilson, I'll send it back to you.
I have said most of what I have to say here, and I appreciate hearing from my colleagues on this. And I feel like our focus tonight really is on the ordinance, and we've covered other things that are clearly important questions, but are not covered here. I would like to echo the one point that Mr. Jorfy made about the package of land use resolutions we passed. And we really do value, being transparent and communicative with residents. And it is true, not every town does the kind of notification that we do earlier than the 10-day requirement, much wider than the 200-foot requirement. So I feel like we're doing a lot to support, to show the value we place on good communication with the public. So with that, I'll send it back to you, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So it sounds like everybody's made their closing remarks. I'll make a couple closing remarks. I do realize that there is fear of the unknown. And I do understand that residents are concerned about what's going to be going in next door to them. We acknowledge that, we understand that, and we have worked through this process, often behind the scenes, as I explained at an earlier meeting, to make this plan a better plan from what was originally proposed to us. So I had made reference in a prior meeting that we weren't at square one where we're negotiating with the Red Bulls. We were already at, I think I said square six at the time. And a resident came back to me and said, well, let's try to get to square seven. We've worked really hard to get to where we are with a plan that we thought would work best for our residents, understanding the concerns that they would have, which is why we pushed back on a number of iterations of the plan that were brought forward to us. And I should say to us, to our professionals, to the TCC, the Technical Coordinating Committee that I had outlined at the prior meeting. We've worked very hard to find a plan that fits both within that site and the residents that surround it, as well as fits the needs of the Red Bulls themselves. I wanted to reiterate one of Mr. Ravitz's comments that his daughter, who played high-level soccer, my son plays one level down, club soccer, but I can tell you at the club level, and this is a lower level than what they're even doing, not even close to what they're doing at the Red Bulls. When they practice up at Central Park in Parsippany, and there are 4 fields going there, and there are 3 or 4 teams on every field, and you stand in the parking lot, you really can't hear anything at practice. It's not a lot of yelling and screaming. It's kids going through drills. These are kids who are serious about soccer, serious enough to want to be there and do this kind of thing. And it doesn't generate a lot of noise. And similarly at the games, there's a very, I don't want to call it professional nature, but I assume at the Red Bulls facility, you might call it a professional nature between the 2 teams. There's not a lot of yelling by parents. They're there to observe. The coach does all the talking. We're told not to talk to the referees. We're not allowed to talk to the players. We're not allowed to say anything really except to each other. Small talk on the sidelines, and the only noise that you hear is when there's a goal that's scored. And that's just 3 or 4 times in a game, because soccer is usually 2-1, 3-1, something like that. So there's not even a lot of noise generated at games when they might have games on site. But I do understand the fear of what might happen on site from people who are not familiar with how a soccer club like that is run. But I think we heard from the general manager about the professional atmosphere that will occur throughout the campus and throughout the organization, and the types of people that come there with regard to the dorms that were mentioned. These are the people who are staying in the dorms. It's not going to be for partying. It's going to be, this is what they hope will be their future livelihood. They are there to, live and breathe soccer, and they don't want to do anything to get themselves thrown off of that team or thrown out of that academy. So will be a very professional run site. Mr. Ravitz, and I think Mr. Mancuso mentioned the fact that, it will bring a strong commercial rateable to Morris Township. We have great taxes in Morris Township for a number of reasons. But one of those is that we have a strong commercial tax base that offsets the residential taxes in our town, or pressures on the residential taxes. And this proposal is a prime example of how the municipality can bring in a great commercial tenant that's going to be viable for years to come with a project that, again, I use the word comparatively, but has comparatively low impacts on the town compared to other things that could go on that site. So this is good for the town in many respects, although the local residents feel the most of the impacts are upon them. We did talk about the various constituencies that we do have to think about, and the other, what I think is close to 25,000 residents. We'll see when the final census numbers come out. But the fact that it's a good commercial rateable is very important with a great tenant that's going in there. And further, with regards to the Red Bulls organization, you heard from the general manager and how sincere he was. I believe he truly was sincere in everything that he said. And we know that they've done a great job contributing and supporting the communities in the other places that they've been. And we're very hopeful that they're going to be a strong member of our community and contribute to our community just beyond being, a resident tenant in our town. And based on the testimony that we heard from the general manager, I think that truly is the case. So I too am very pleased that we've gotten to this point. I, in closing, want to thank everybody who's been part of the process, the professionals who did a lot of work in the months leading up to this to bring us a plan that we felt comfortable presenting to the public. Multiple professionals were involved with that. Thank you to the Township Committee for the deliberations. Thank you so much to the public who participated in all the meetings. I just want to say again that you have been heard. Your concerns are heard. Those concerns are going to be taken to the planning board. They're going to be taken to the professionals and working with you on speeding and cut through traffic and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully when the Red Bulls make a presentation at the planning board, they might have some suggestions of their own about how they can work with the community to help alleviate some of those existing concerns. But those, again, are planning board issues. And I have confidence that all these issues will be addressed and the public will have ample opportunity to express their concerns to the planning board before any prior final approvals are given. So that summarizes my remarks. Does anybody else have anything to say, or shall I call a motion for a vote? And seeing none, I think I will make the motion to approve ordinance 2721 as written. Can I have a second to my motion?
Second.
Mayor, I'm sorry, this is Danielle. I just want to remind you that a motion to approve was made at the December 2nd meeting.
So we
Okay.
just need a vote.
So we are just voting on that initial approval, initial motion?
Yeah, unless you were, amending or rescinding or redoing the motion, it was just a motion to approve, which was made and seconded at the December 2nd meeting.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. So if there are no further comments, anybody have any further comments before I ask for a roll call? And seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mr. Jurfy,
Yes.
Mr. Ravitz,
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Grayzel.
Yes. I, Jeffrey Grayzel, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Thank you, everybody. We do have one more item on the agenda tonight. At every meeting we have a public comment inquiry section. So although we didn't recognize anybody from the public previous to this, because the public portion of the hearing had been closed, we are going to open it up to the public now for anybody who has a comment about anything else in Morris Township.
First up, I see a Don McHugh.
Mr. McHugh,
Hello, good evening.
good evening, sir.
I'm Don McHugh. I reside at 10 Aldridge Court in the township. My public comment is that despite Columbia Park's willingness to accommodate a new neighbor, the way the ordinance has been adopted is disregarding the concerns that the neighbors have. Most specifically, the Stockton Drive issue. An ordinance is the law. Planning board is bound by the ordinance the same way the citizenry is. The ordinance that's been adopted says that primary access shall be via Stockton Drive. There was some discussion earlier about the possibility of a variance at the planning board. I disagree with that. Variance is, you're not going to have a variance when the wording is shall be. That was raised earlier. Secondly, if we're going to have a possible, first there was a statement that there would be no tournaments. Now we hear that there's a possibility of a tournament with 8 teams. I don't care what you say. How you do 8 teams on 2 fields is beyond me. And the third thing is the statement was that there was low impact to this use. Where that came from, it certainly isn't a professional opinion because it's not correct. And then finally, the township went to the trouble of telling the people on the cul-de-sac they were going to be absolutely protected and nothing was going to happen there. Well, what about the people in Columbia Park who just want the Stockton Drive issue resolved? Was the Red Bulls, were they ever asked about an access on the service road other than Stockton Drive?
Thank you, sir.
Wait a minute, I'm not finished. I'm asking you a question.
You're asking me a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Were the Red Bulls ever approached to have their access and egress on other than Stockton Drive?
Yes. So we had opportunity for public comment and public questioning before we voted on the ordinance. So there was ample opportunity given to everybody. And we're not the ordinance is passed. So the next hearing is.
The question has nothing to do with the public hearing. It has to do with were the Red Bulls asked the question. Here's why this is important.
It's not the Red Bulls to make the determination of whether that is safe.
I agree.
We had testimony from our professional that there's a reason why Honeywell Main, what used to be called Honeywell Main Drive, now called Road A or Stockton Road, is the primary access point, should be the primary access point for safety reasons and design reasons.
Everybody realize that's a private road, not a public road?
That is correct. It's a private road. That it's a private road that's owned by the Lot 5 owner.
All right. So all the soccer fans can come in and use the private road. The reason I'm bringing this up is there's enough discontent over this subject that there's strongly being considered within my development the possibility of an appeal of the grant of the approval of the ordinance based upon it being arbitrary and unreasonable on the issue of health, safety, and welfare for the residents. That's the reason I'm bringing this up.
Understood,
Thank you,
sir. Thank you for your comments.
Next up I see is ASKRX at Verizon.net.
ASKRX.
Correct.
Are those, is that the person that sent the emails today earlier? It sounds familiar.
It's the same one we had with the audio issues.
I think that might be Andrew Kessler. I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
we had previous audio issues with Mr. Kessler.
Mr. Kessler, can you hear us? Can you speak? Or if it's whoever ASKRX is. Okay, so we'll come back to him. Who else do we have?
And next up is Alfred DeMiro, I believe it is.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Mr. DeMiro. Your name and address for the record, please?
Alfred DeMiro, 2 Aldrich Court in Columbia Park. Mr. Mayor, when you did your opening statement tonight, and you can correct me if I misunderstood, I thought you referenced a recent letter from the Red Bulls that clarified certain commitments. I have not seen a recent letter, and I couldn't find one posted on the township site. Did I misunderstand, or was there a letter that we just haven't seen?
The municipality gets lots of communications, and I just wanted to the record to reflect that we had received those 3 related to the proceedings, but no, we did not post that letter to the website.
No, or the
And what
HOA.
was,
And we did not post the HOA letter to the website, nor did we post the letter from Visions Real Estate.
right, well, can you tell me the dates of these letters? Because I know I personally would like to see what the Red Bulls said in terms of clarifying their commitments.
Sure. Yeah, so any communication involving the municipality can be received with an Open Public Records Act request. So the date of the Red Bulls letter is December 10th from Red Bull Arena Inc. to the Township of Morris. The letter from Columbia Park Homeowners Association is dated December 9th to Mayor and Council. And the Vision Real Estate Partners letter actually does not actually have a date on the letter.
I can,
Do you have a date of the email when it came in? Because it did come in via email.
let me check, sir.
But are you
I'm
saying,
guessing it's the 9th or around the 10th, I'm guessing. A couple days
Well,
after.
they all came in by around
Around,
the same time.
yeah, I'm guessing on the 10th also, or the 11th.
but are you saying, Mr. Mayor, without a formal request through the Public Meetings Act, that these letters will simply not be posted on the township website?
Correct.
Correct. We don't post individual communications on the township website. You are welcome to have a copy of it.
Right.
If you write the
I see a
municipality.
difference- I see a difference though, because I think you did say that the Red Bulls clarified certain commitments
Mhm.
and that they made. And I think we should have been given those, not necessarily alterations, but clarifications before this vote took place. But we'll make a formal request then. If that's what we have to do. But I don't think that's consistent with transparency, not giving us the Red Bulls letter at the very least.
Right. Well, I do want to point out that the public hearing portion had been closed. So this was really just for the township committee's consideration and in deliberations, and really was not, like I said, came after the public portion was closed. So you wouldn't have had an opportunity to comment on it anyway. Mr. Quinn tells me that the letter from Visions was on December 10th.
Okay, so the Red Bulls and Visions was December 10th.
We'd be happy to provide those to you.
Provided I make the formal request.
Yeah. How do you want people to do it? Just send an
They
email?
can do the open request, or they can put it into an email.
Yeah, you can just send an email to us saying I request copies of the documents. You don't need to fill out a form.
Yeah, clerk-
We just need a documentation of a request for some internal documents. But you can just write an email to, it's actually best to send it to the clerk. If you send it to clerk@morristwp.com, she can process any document requests, and we'd be happy to provide you an electronic copy of the letters.
Thank you.
So again, for anybody who's interested, it's clerk@morristwp.com.
Next up, Richard Sella.
Richard Sella.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Your name and address
Great.
for the record?
Richard Sella, 6 Oheka Place, Morristown, New Jersey.
Good evening.
Good evening. So let me start by saying I do support the proposal to bring in the Red Bulls. I think it's a good use of the space. I would say probably many of our residents would agree with that. And that seems to be the focus of your discussion tonight, and I don't think you're going to get a lot of pushback on that. Okay, I think we're probably there. I think we're all ignoring the big white elephant in the room, which you guys have glossed over remarkably well in your wonderful bureaucratic way. And that is the access, which is of utmost importance to the residents of your community in Morris Township. I referenced something that was said by Mr. Giorfi, and he briefly mentioned the white elephant, saying, well, Stockton Road used to be a main entrance to the Honeywell headquarters. And that's true. That's very true. But got news for you, Mr. Giorfi and the rest of the committee. It's not Honeywell headquarters anymore. They moved out. They're gone. It is now a residential area. Things change. Please recognize that things change. It's now a residential area. Let me address some things that Ms. Wilson said, and in her impassioned pleading, saying, I've given this so much thought. And at the end, I support to leave the ordinance that Stockton Drive should be the main entrance. Well, thank you. And you gave your rather shallow reasons in that, well, it's very close to the entrance from Normandy Drive. And when you come down the hill, it's very close to Normandy Drive. Well, let me tell you something. Drive it sometime. It's the difference between that entrance and the other entrance. It's 2/3 of the way down. And the pitch steepness of the hill is exactly the same. So I'm lost on your concern about the closest to Normandy Drive. And then your second comment was, well, to do anything about that, we'd have to get the county involved. Wow, I thought that was your job. I can't go to the county. We elect you all to represent us as citizens of Morris Township to act in our behalf and in our interest to do things that are proper for the residents and taxpayers of the community. So it's your job to approach the community. You made it sound like, Ms. Wilson, oh, we'd have to go to the county. I can't do that. Whoa. Well, maybe start doing your job. Okay, that's what we expect you to do. And if you don't want to do it, we'll find people who do. Believe me, there's a lot of people up here. Lastly, I agree with what Mr. McHugh said.
Mr. Sarah, I take offense to that. Please don't use this as a forum to insult our committee members.
I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just drawing out the truth and repeating what people said. Okay, maybe you don't want to hear it. Okay, and lastly, I agree with and echo what Mr. McHugh said. He's a bright man. He's an attorney, and he brings up some very important things, including potentially challenging this in a legal environment. I'm behind that 100%, both emotionally, legally, and I'd be willing to put money up to do that. So I guess my last comment is, the Red Bulls seem to be okay with working with us. And I give them a lot of credit, and I think they're a great organization. Unfortunately for us as citizens of the township, you guys, as our township committee members, do not seem to have the same. You say, oh, we've been listening to you. You've been listening, but you haven't done anything on our behalf. So I think I will end with that. And, as far as transparency, you guys already voted before you heard from us. So you approved this thing. So much for transparency. End of comment. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Mayor, I'd like to make one comment in response. Just briefly.
Hold on one second. Mr. Slate, have you muted the resident?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Ms. Wilson.
Yeah, just one comment in response. I appreciate these comments. And one correction regarding something Mr. Sella said is that a major point that I was making about was the presence of a left-hand turn lane, and there is none at the service road. And yes, it is true, it's a county road, and we can talk further about that. Getting funding for road projects is extremely difficult, and I'm happy to talk further with residents about that. But I did want to just clarify that there was a mischaracterization there of the point I made about, I was not making a point about Normandy Parkway. I was making a point primarily about the left turn lane. And so this is kind of an example where, you know, having conversations like this in a large public meeting are very difficult. My preference would be to have a conversation offline individually with the resident, and I'd be happy to do that.
Mhm. Okay,
Next up is Linda Levy.
Hi, it's Linda Levi, 13 Ohio Place in Morristown. So I respect the amount of respect that you have for the maybe 16 to 20 residents of the Featherly area. They're being longtime residents, wanting to respect them. But out of curiosity, I just put into Zillow one of the addresses. The average taxes that those homes pay is about $10,000 a year. You have 235 new residents. There's nobody lucky enough to have that small tax base. And it feels like your conversation keeps saying we want to respect these older residents and that you're not grateful for the tax revenue besides what you potentially will receive from the Red Bulls by the 235 residents who've moved here in the last 3 years. Thank you.
thank you.
Next up, Gary Winey, I believe it is.
Gary Wine?
Gary Wine at 1 Delano Court in Morristown. My unit faces the property in question. I want to thank the board for their deliberations. I am very much in favor of this project, despite the fact I am on the border of the property and one of the closest 4 residents to this property. The reason for this goes back a long history. I was a resident of Morris Township from 1979 to about 81 and lived on Green Knolls Road, which is several of my neighbors have spoken from my old neighborhood. I now live up on the hill facing this massive, ugly parking lot, barren land, and I am happy that the Red Bulls are coming. The reasons I am happy the Red Bulls are coming is I also worked as the assistant to the medical director of Honeywell probably from 84 to 89. And I experienced the traffic of 1,500 or 2,000 cars having ingress and egress to this property every day. And I want to say this to my neighbors, that I would fear for that. And that was my fear when I bought here. But I still took this property with this view. I welcome the Red Bulls. I welcome their 300 or 400 cars. The alternative is horrendous. I want everybody to take that into consideration when they consider all these things. Legal action, we'll get a lawyer, we'll try to overturn this. I think this is the best thing for the community. I consider this low impact, having experienced the Honeywell Allied Signal horrendousness back in the 80s. And I commend you for your actions. I do hope that we can push upon the Red Bulls at the planning board level to use Stockton as an ingress, where they will then turn into their parking lot far before they get to Aldrich Court. And I hope the planning board will push towards having the egress point being at the red light at the service entrance, which will avoid traffic, left-hand turns, and people wandering into other parts of our property. Once again, I thank you and I commend you for your work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. And just to echo some of the things that you said, I am hopeful too that we can come up with, the planning board will come up with, along with our traffic experts, a plan that will have all the cars go into or a majority of the cars go into the Red Bulls parking lot before they even hit the residential area of the property, and that the majority of the cars will not be seen by the residential property owners in the area. And I also want to echo what the site used to look like. My wife used to work there. My son went to daycare there while my wife was working at the site. And there was just a tremendous, it was a sea of cars parked in that parking lot there. And the traffic in and out was just tremendous. So again, I use the word comparative to that. This is a very low impact use of what could be going in there. Okay, next resident.
Sue?
Just says Sue.
Yeah, it's Sue, Sarcelli, 9 Green Knolls Road. First
Good
of all, I
evening.
want to let you know, I got you all trumped. My dad and I are the final original residents in Green Knolls Road. My dad has been there for 66 years. So I can tell you from Allied Chemical up, all of the history of the area, all right? So yes, we were there and we had Allied and then we had Honeywell, and that's fine. The people that have moved in, I'm sorry to say, with all due respect, if you thought that 80 acres was going to stay open space, I'm sorry, but that was an assumption that you shouldn't have made. That's what I want to say. First of all, I thought that gentleman that spoke with those sarcastic comments were definitely unwarranted. You guys have done a phenomenal job allowing us 2 full nights for public hearing. It was fantastic, and I really appreciate all the time you've taken. My 2 questions are procedural questions because I'm not really that, I really don't know that much about the politics in the town. First of all, is it possible, you had mentioned that there was an updated concept plan, that they had made a lot of changes, the Red Bulls? Number 1, are we able to see that? And number 2, when the site plan comes out, and this is just like I said, I don't know, when the site plan comes out and it's submitted to the town, how do we know it's been submitted and then that we could then view that site plan before the public hearings? I see Kathy shaking her head. Maybe she has the answers for me.
Yes. That was another one of the resolutions that we passed, advocating that when a site plan application has been determined to be complete, that it is posted at that time, which may be, it sometimes takes a while to schedule schedule a site plan to make room in the schedule. So we have advocated to post the site plans when they're complete. And that takes time, especially this one. There's going to be a lot of information, a lot of details.
Oh, sure. Yes.
But I hope that it will be posted as soon as it is deemed complete, which may be a little bit of time before the meeting is actually scheduled.
Okay, and you had.
It would be more than a week at least before the meeting is scheduled.
Okay, that general development plan, I think you had mentioned one time, is that part of the site plan or is that a separate thing?
Mr. Slate would have to answer that. I believe it's separate, is it not?
It is separate, and that would be in advance of site plan application.
It is in advance. Okay. And do we get to see that?
Yes, that would be available. Paul, is it something that they could submit at the same time? They would do that at one hearing? I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, they have to be submitted separately, as you know, Jim, because you can't proceed with an individual site plan until the GDP is amended. But I will say that I have seen instances where, depending on the individual planning board agendas, I've seen instances where an individual site plan proceeds immediately after a GDP approval.
Okay, so then I guess the bottom line is just keep an eye out on the website then, right?
And I'm sure there'll be some public notification given the importance of this application.
Great.
The township will be making communications to the public about availability.
Another thing that's important is for residents to sign up to receive the planning board agendas. And you can do that on our website under notifications. And then as soon as the agenda is available, it is sent automatically to your inbox. And I would recommend doing that.
Okay. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I sure will. And again, thank you all for your hard work on this subject. I really do think a lot that you have all put a lot of time and effort into this. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We,
Mayor.
we didn't get to answer your first question, but regarding the concept plan, there's just one concept plan. The amendments that were discussed are the fact that the Red Bulls, had heard the residents' issues about the drop-off area on Stockton and had already contemplated moving the drop-off area to the parking lot side, so that there wouldn't be any drop-off. I think they said other than for special needs attendees or some other types of visitors that would use the drop-off area.
Next up is Vincent O'Connor.
Vincent O'Connor. Mr. O'Connor? Nope. Can you unmute yourself, Mr. O'Connor?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes, sir. Your
Okay.
name and address for the record, please.
Vincent O'Connor. I live at 3 Aldrich Court.
Good evening.
And I was asking, at the time the planning board makes its recommendations, who has the power to either accept or approve those recommendations or disapprove? And if they are not consistent with the ordinance, what is the process then for adopting them if they are deemed to be worthy of adoption for any reason such as safety and impact and consideration? And certainly if the plan as submitted is not consistent with the quality of life for the residents that are directly adjacent, and in some cases, their properties are even contiguous with the plan.
Mr. Phillips, can I turn to you for an answer on that? We touched on things that didn't conform with the ordinance earlier, but you can speak to it again and the other issues the gentleman just asked.
So an individual site plan application is going to be filed with the planning board. That application may or may not include requests for variances from the zoning ordinance that the Township Committee just adopted. The applicant will basically put in its case before the planning board at a public hearing. It will introduce witnesses. And I think, Mayor, you talked about the types of witnesses, from engineer to noise experts to lighting experts to architects to planners. Will cover every issue that should be covered as part of the site plan process. The board will hear from the public. There may be some give and take between the board and the applicant in terms of the plan that's filed vis-a-vis the ultimate plan that may be what will be voted on by the board in terms of an approval. And after all that's done, the board will deliberate and take a vote on the entire application, which may again include requests for variances. It may not include requests for variances. It will just, you won't know until the process plays out at the planning board and an application is filed and there's a public hearing and the board gets to hear from the applicant and the public.
Something doesn't conform with the ordinance, that is what's called a variance. And then there's a requirement that needs to be met for the planning board to approve any variances from the ordinance, correct?
Yeah, there are standards for a board to grant variances, which are set forth in the municipal land use statute. They are also buttressed by what I refer to as relevant case law. And ultimately, the board will hear any requests for relief from the applicant. And the board will determine, whether or not that relief should or should not be granted.
Very good, sir. Does that answer your question?
Well, it does, but at some point then I guess the process could come back conceivably to the township if the changes are necessary, that are deemed to be necessary, would require then a revote or of the overlay, which you've approved tonight?
Most likely not. I would think that any variance requirement would go to the planning board, and if it was a big variance, again, they would have to meet certain requirements to have that granted by the planning board. But I doubt it would come back to us.
Okay, so then changes that might be deemed necessary or requested by the community, and maybe the planning board would feel that they're reasonable, then the variance at that level could easily make that binding then on the development or the developer.
Yeah, the planning board will come to an agreement with the developer, and as I stated, there's a resolution at the end that everybody has to abide by. Just one example, if for the federal court residents, the resolution would state that there would be no access to, federally court, and that would be binding in the resolution. So there would be a whole litany of things that are going to be the Red Bulls would be bound by that planning board approval. But again, there will be ample opportunity for the residents to weigh in and make suggestions and make testimony to the planning board on things that they think are good and maybe not so good, or should be thought through a little bit more or changed.
Mayor, can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
I'd like to just comment a little bit on my experience working with the Abbey. And it was not that was a redevelopment project, which is not identical to what this is, but there are a lot of similarities.
Sorry, if I can interrupt you for 1 second. The Abbey is referring to the property on Madison Avenue that the Restoration Hardware is renovating.
Yes, and the similarity that I wanted to bring out is that in that case, we also had an applicant that was very willing to work collaboratively with the residents. And I'm sensing that here with the Red Bulls as well. And there was a lot of communication that took place between, in the case of the Abbey, Restoration Hardware, and especially the immediate neighbors. And I would anticipate there would be opportunities for that here. I know there's already some communication with neighbors, with the homeowners association, there will be communication with the Green Knolls neighborhood. And my experience with the Abbey was that those communications, which were actually offline from the public hearing, they were extremely helpful. And a lot of the resident concerns, they found ways to address them. And it goes to the whole notion that there's a lot of options here for addressing the concerns, and particularly in this case with the internal circulation, that is definitely the purview of the planning board. And I am anticipating that the Red Bulls will be willing partners in communicating with the residents on coming up with solution options that address people's concerns.
Thanks, I agree with that. Okay,
Well,
Jim.
thank you very much. You've answered my questions.
Very good. Thank you for joining us tonight, sir. Round two.
So next up again, the ASK RX at verizon.net. I see there's a second address that's popping up and down. I'm going to ask that one. Maybe there's a problem with the other one.
ASKRX. Can you unmute yourself?
So you have two windows open.
Are they still there?
They're on one shut down.
He's to unmute himself.
So you need to
Yes.
mute yourself in order for us to hear you.
There you go. You just.
Can you speak now? Now we can hear you. Yes, sir. I heard a voice for a second there.
No.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. Oh,
So last up, Richard Sella again.
Mr. Sella?
Yeah, no, I didn't have any additional comments. I did recognize Catherine's clarification about the entrance on the Honeywell Service Road being a left-hand turn, but I think it was both. I think you mentioned the left-hand turn and the proximity to the road up north, but that's fine. No, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, sir.
Nothing else, sir.
And seeing nobody else, I'll make a motion to close the public portion.
Right. No.
Oh, what?
Ann's iPad.
Almost.
Ann's iPad?
We just had one.
One more.
We have Ann's iPad.
Ann's
I'll
iPad.
one more. Ann's iPad, can you unmute yourself? We can hear you now.
She just lowered her hand.
No? Is the hand lowered now?
I lowered the hands,
Oh, you lowered the hand.
but she is listed as unmuted. She should be able to talk.
Ann's iPad?
Yes, hi, I'm
Hi.
sorry. Can you
Yes,
hear
we can.
me?
Yes, we can hear you. Your name and address for the record, please.
Ann Kleemeyer, 6 Indian Head Road, Morristown, New Jersey.
Good evening.
I'm calling tonight as a little diversion from the Honeywell discussion that you've been having. And I'm calling in to talk to you, the governing body, on how the Morris Township Planning Board has been conducting itself, and which I find disturbing and have been wanting to express for a while. I am referring to Monday night's adoption of the Delbarton resolution. This was a 60 to 70 page document that the planning board adopted without mentioning any neat details, without any discussion, even though one of their own, Ms. Wilson, asked for one. The meeting was then opened up for public comment, and several people had tuned in to speak, but since nothing was brought up, there was nothing to discuss. This lack of openness I find very disturbing. You have to wonder if this was a tactic to keep the public out of the meeting. And then they made a display of congratulating each other for putting it all together, which I find very disturbing for a public body. This also happened this October at the final meeting of the Delbarton proposal. After a 6-hour meeting, a vote was taken by the planning board members at midnight. And it took less than 10 minutes, again without discussion, to make a decision that involved a year and a half of attorneys' press presentations and cross-examinations, testimonies from experts, and public input. To make a decision so late at night after an exhausting session and everyone being tired, I consider this to be entirely inappropriate. The feeling of let's just get this over with was so evident and so insulting. And then for a member of the board to publicly thank the attorney for the developer for his patience during these proceedings. I wonder if this planning board has the interests of the public at heart or those of the developers. I would like to recommend to the Township Committee, when they make their annual appointments in January, that some changes be made to the members of the present planning board. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I personally had to recuse myself from that hearing, so I don't want to make any comment. Does any other member of the Township Committee want to make a comment? Or no?
I would just say to Ms. Kleemeyer, I appreciate your comments. Thank you. And
I'm going to echo that. I also appreciate that comment. This is the first I'm hearing of any type of behavior like this. And I know that there are going to be some new appointments. I'm going to let Mayor-elect Giorfi address that if at this time, if he has anything to say.
Yeah, I mean, we're working with the committee for next year on the reappointment process, and we'll announce those appointments at a reorganization meeting on January 5th. But I believe, each year there's only a few appointments that are up, so we can only make so many changes each calendar year. But I appreciate your concerns, and we'll take them into consideration as the committee prepares for our next appointments that we'll announce in January. So thank you very much for your time, and I would wholeheartedly agree that making decisions late into the night is not good governing on behalf of our residents, and that's one of the many things why we came up with our own land use resolutions from the Township Committee perspective, to make sure we are expanding the public comment process and deliberative process for the governing body. So I appreciate your concerns and thank you for bringing them up.
Mayor, I will add one other comment, which is that we have decided to establish a hard stop of 10:30 for the planning board meetings going forward, precisely for situations like this. It's very difficult to, excuse me, it's very difficult to deliberate on complex material after you've been, hearing things for, a few hours, and then it's late into the night. I very much understand that, and we have made a change on that for next year already.
Very good, thank you. Everybody saw the deliberations that took place tonight. We've been at this 2 hours and 15 minutes almost. I'm hopeful that the other land use boards in Morris Township will take a cue from us and do appropriate deliberations going forward. Okay, so seeing no further hands raised, I will ask that somebody close the public commentary.
Mrs. Barrett just came on.
Mrs. Barrett just came up. Okay, last one, Mrs. Barrett.
Unmute.
Yes, we can hear you. Your name and address for the record?
Hi, yes. Betty Barrett, 5 Loman Road. I live right across the street from this new development. And I just want to take time to thank the committee for their dedication and all their hard work that they've given to this project. And the fact that I can get on Zoom and hear everything has really been quite awakening for me of how hard you do work and late into the night. So just want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Lohman. Thank you for that. And seeing nobody else, will somebody move that we close public portion?
So moved.
Maybe I'll have better luck. So moved.
I'll take that as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate everybody's participation in this process. I again want to say that we represent all the people in Morris Township, including the 235 residents at Columbia Park. We took your comments to heart, although things don't seem to appear to some of you working out in your favor. Like we stated, comparatively, we all feel that this is a really good project. We think we have a really good partner in the Red Bulls. I am very hopeful that they will be working with the community moving forward to put in a plan that accommodates the concerns of the surrounding neighbors, with that being via buffering, via traffic circulation and other means. And I trust that they will be a good neighbor to you and a good tenant in Morris Township for years and years to come. And with that, I will close out 2021 and remind everybody that our next meeting is on January 5th at 7 p.m., the annual reorganization meeting where your next mayor will be installed. It's a 1-year term from a member of the governing body. So my term is ending at the end of this year, and we'll have a new mayor next year and a new deputy mayor. So that's on December 5th, and the first regular meeting of the governing body will take place. That wasn't be on January 5th, and the first meeting will take place on January 19th of the coming month. With that, Well, can I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved, sir.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, everybody. Happy New Year to everybody, and safe holidays. Good night.
Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
holidays and
Thank you.
Happy
Good
New
night.
Year. Stay safe, everybody.